Secretary of State under President Obama, Joel Rubin. Joel, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Hannah.
You and I have talked about the potential of this conflict for months now. What are your thoughts on what transpired just a few hours ago, Saturday night?
Well, we're in a new Middle East, without a doubt. And as Robert points out, a whole basket of potential repercussions are available now to Iran. But, you know, President Trump, when he made this call, he didn't make it in a vacuum. He made it as a result of the reality that Iran was moving towards the weaponization of its nuclear program. It had amassed enough enriched uranium for 9 to 10 bombs, and it had been increasing that enrichment even during the negotiations. And I think what we've witnessed over the past week and a half of Israeli strikes into Iran is that the risk just got intolerable from the president's perspective, which is that if these strikes do not succeed in eliminating its enrichment program, it would ensure that Iran would go towards weaponization quickly. So a real vice grip of a decision for the president. He made that call, but clearly now we're going to be in a very difficult period in the days ahead.
And Joel, there is no doubt Iran actively supported Hezbollah after October 7th. It supported the Houthis. It's directly attacked Israel twice since then. Talk to me about what these strikes have done to Iran militarily, but also diplomatically.
Yeah, you know, in many ways, these strikes were the capstone of everything you just described, Hannah. You know, over the past year and a half plus, since October 7th, Israel has effectively destroyed Hezbollah's responsive capability in southern Lebanon, although, of course, it still does exist, but in a very modest fashion compared to what it was before. It's done the same to Hamas. We've seen the Houthis in Yemen. They have capabilities, and they've also been on the receiving end of blunt force. And of course, Assad in Syria fell. So all of that change in the strategic environment opened up a pathway for Israel to begin its strikes a week and a half ago against Iran's nuclear program. And I think that's why we saw what we saw last night. You know, this is Iran. It's a large country, over 90 million people. It has influence across the region and around the world as well. And it has capabilities largely through its network, its terrorist network, and its covert activities. And so that's what I think we're going to have to be watching out for now in the days ahead in terms of how it could respond.
Joel, Iran is not really loved by its Islamic neighbors. Despite that, Saudi Arabia is voicing concern over the strikes from last night. The UN Secretary General calling the strikes a dangerous escalation in the region already on edge. You and I talked about this a few weeks ago, the fear of seeing what we saw in Iraq in the early 1990s play out here. You mentioned the Middle East is waking up to a new reality. How has this changed the dynamic of the entire region as the world, here in the U.S., we're waking up, but the world is learning about what's going on?
Sure, Hannah. You know, I think what Robert described in Tel Aviv is probably happening in most major cities around the region, in particular those with tight relations with the United States, like Saudi Arabia and Iraq, for example, and Jordan, of course, as well. We have about 40,000 troops in the region. And Saudi, for example, has a lot of vulnerabilities, in particular on its eastern side, nearer towards Iran, with its oil facilities. So in the region now, there's going to be a question of bracing for response. The key X factor in this, I have to mention this, Hannah, is that much of the missile launching capability that Iran possesses has been attacked. That doesn't mean it's at all destroyed or dismantled, but it has been targeted by the Israelis and by the United States. I assume now we're probably going to be keeping a close eye on that as well for defensive responses by us and by Israel and potentially these other countries as well. But yeah, it's a new Middle East. Iran is angry, upset. This was the capstone of their entire defense strategy. They spent trillions of dollars on their nuclear program over decades, and now it's in rubble and flames.
Iran is repeatedly saying the U.S. strikes will have everlasting consequences. The president issued this warning last night. Let's play that for our viewers. I'll talk to you on the other side.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
Trump warning Iran against any retaliation. I was telling Robert I've been keeping an eye on Iranian media who are repeatedly saying every U.S. soldier and U.S. citizen in the region is a target. How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, you know, that line, many targets left by the president, really stood out to me because that was a point of it's just not over. And I think that was an implied threat to the supreme leader and his life, his safety, as well as other leaders of the Iranian regime. And so that is a warning to them that if they're going to do what they're saying this morning, that they too will be targeted. And that's where it gets into the question of slippery slope and how deep will the United States get into this war. Right now, clearly the administration hopes it'll just be these strikes and that the tough talk back and forth will subside. But I think the president put it out there to say that he's watching and he will take more strikes if he has to.
Iran's foreign minister saying this morning diplomacy is not an option, but they are requesting an emergency session of the UN Security Council. What do you think will come out of that, Joel?
Yeah, you know, diplomacy is never an option until it is. And it always ends that way, right? I mean, even after World War II, there was a diplomatic agreement to end it. So I assume that we're going to see a lot of activity, if not already. I'm sure it's happening right now within the region and with Europe and others. That doesn't mean that there's going to be fruitful talks or that the Iranians, for example, are going to want to speak directly with us. But there's going to be a lot of international energy right now to try to cap this where it is and come to some kind of agreement and understanding between the United States and Iran on the way forward. The key difference was the nuclear enrichment program. There was no connection between the United States and Iran on what that will look like down the road. And now that that is, frankly, off the table, physically that is, then maybe there is a window for some type of new diplomatic agreement. I do think we're going to see a lot of activity in that space in the days ahead.
Joel Rubin, we always appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much.